The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Kevin Stefanski may not even have to make a decision on who his starting quarterback will be week 1 because it looks like it's going to be made for him.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
Yes, Shedeur Sanders did essentially sit out practice on Wednesday after sustaining an oblique injury early on in practice. It was a very weird situation, similar to a couple weeks ago when Shedeur didn't practice. And I guess we all should have just assumed he must be hurt because he was throwing during individual stuff, during one-on-one drills with receivers and defensive backs. And then all of a sudden, you got to the first team setting. It was 7-on-7s. It was Kenny Pickett going first. It was Tyler Huntley after him. And then the first 11-on-11s, and it was Joe Flacco. It was Dillon Gabriel, and then it was Tyler Huntley. And we were all sitting there like, where's Shedeur Sanders? And so that basically played out throughout the rest of practice, where Flacco took the majority of the reps with the first team. Dillon Gabriel sprinkled in a little bit with the first team, but took most of his reps with the 2s and the 3s during various 11-on-11 drills against the Eagles defense. And then we got to the end of practice, and Shedeur Sanders hadn't taken a snap during team drills the entire time. We came to find out it was an oblique injury for Shedeur, and as a precaution, they held him out. And so essentially, at this point, the only quarterback who hasn't been hurt during training camp is Joe Flacco. And so it's starting to look more and more like Kevin Stefanski isn't going to have much of a decision to make when it comes to this quarterback situation and this quarterback competition, because Kenny Pickett looks like very much a non-factor right now. And if his goal is to have a quarterback picked by next week, when it's the third preseason game, sort of your final dress rehearsal, if you will, to get you ready for the regular season, he's going to play a lot. You're going to see the ones largely play in that final preseason game against the Rams. And so if that's the goal, Flacco's the only one who really seems like he's in line to do that, whereas Kenny Pickett obviously hasn't been able to do much of anything since the hamstring injury that he suffered. And then Dillon Gabriel's been doing with the hamstring, and they sort of tried to slowly ramp him back up. He got thrown a little bit more today because, again, out of necessity, they wanted to get him out there and get him playing more. And it looked for a while like they were just trying to catch him up for the limited reps that he had missed, I guess, in the last couple practices that they had, and obviously not playing in the game on Friday last week. And so that was initially what I kind of thought until we got the update that Shedeur Sanders had been hurt. And there's always the possibility that this isn't a serious oblique injury, and maybe Shedeur Sanders can get out there sooner rather than later. But I usually these things take some time. And so it sort of sets the stage for the quarterback situation to solve itself. And Flacco is going to be your week 1 starter, even though I think we all sort of saw that coming. We were reading the tea leaves on that to begin with. But I think now it just kind of becomes even more evident because it's the only choice that really makes any sense. He's the only quarterback who's really been healthy throughout the entirety of camp to this point. I also think what this also does, and Stefanski wouldn't necessarily get into quite yet what his plans are for Saturday's game against the Eagles, but he did mention that obviously if Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel can't go, that Shedeur Sanders, this was before practice, that Shedeur Sanders would be the starter. Well, now it looks like Shedeur Sanders isn't going to really be part of the conversation potentially for Saturday's game at all. And so that means if Pickett's not as well, now all of a sudden Dillon Gabriel gets sort of thrust into the position where he's going to be your starter, and then Tyler Huntley takes over at some point. So it's kind of the opposite of the reverse of last week, where you just take the other rookie quarterback. Shedeur got his start last week, then it went to Tyler Huntley. Now it's the other rookie quarterback, and Gabriel goes to Tyler Huntley. That's what it certainly looks like is going to be the setup on Saturday. That's assuming that Dillon Gabriel gets through practice tomorrow, and he's totally okay because they are still sort of monitoring that hamstring injury and making sure that they're not doing anything. They're not putting too much stress on him or on it before he really gets a chance to, go out and potentially play on Saturday. And what I thought was interesting was that Stefanski actually admitted that his plan all along was to play each rookie in those first 2 preseason games, the goal was always going to sort of be to split them between the 2 rookies. Like Shedeur's going to get one, Dylan's going to get one. And that was kind of the thought process there. And so now he's kind of had that sort itself out for him as well, where just based on necessity, they had to go with Shedeur last week. And based on necessity this week, it looks like they're going to have to go with Dylan. And so it is just kind of what it is. And we'll see how that kind of works and plays itself out. And tomorrow with the joint practice and then leading into the weekend. But a lot of things that are sort of just becoming obvious, and without Kevin Stefanski even really having to lift a finger to a degree and have to like really make any hard decisions on the position specifically. It's funny how these things sometimes work out this way. But it's another injury that sort of derails whatever the plan was going to be for this quarterback competition. And frankly, it's disappointing because it seems like by the time we get through that game on Saturday, we'll have a game of Shedeur Sanders to go off of and a game of Dillon Gabriel to go off of. But you won't have a game where they both sort of played and showed you different things and sort of competed with each other in that setting of a preseason game together. And it also takes Shedeur Sanders out of an opportunity to go out and build upon what he showed last week in the preseason, which was a very, very good start. I talked about it on the podcast. Like a lot of stuff that we all thought were signs of a guy trending in the right direction, fixing some things that the team's obviously been emphasizing with him and working on, and that he's getting better. And he looks like an NFL quarterback. And there was reason for so much excitement over the weekend and leading into this week because of how he played. Like maybe he can be the guy. And I understand where all that comes from. Now you're going to get a chance to see what Dylan can do. And we'll compare those games. But it would have been nice to also see Shedeur take another step, right? And get even more reps out there and see if he could improve upon even more things that he was trying to work on this week after that performance. Which, by the way, he wants to do. Because even he said like he left some things on the table last week on Friday that he wanted back. And so this was going to be his chance to sort of do that in another preseason game. And now that kind of is likely off the table for him. We'll see what the situation brings tomorrow. We'll see if Sanders' injury is more serious, if it's something that's going to keep him out for Saturday. I'm sort of anticipating that right now. But I think it's kind of twofold here. That Stefanski's decision for Saturday, much like last week's quarterback situation, everyone was freaking out about, are they setting Shedeur up for failure last week? And it was like, guys, they don't have a lot of other quarterbacks right now. They weren't going to play Joe Flacco. Shedeur was the only other healthy quarterback, and so they had to bring Tyler Huntley in to sort of help the situation as well to get through the preseason. And so the same thing kind of applies this week, where now it's the other rookie who's likely going to get a shot. But then also, it is abundantly clear at this point, if it wasn't already just based off the rep share, that Joe Flacco is more than likely going to be the starting quarterback, barring something crazy week 1 of the season, because he's taken the majority of those reps. He's kind of tuning himself up into getting ready for the regular season. Kenny Pickett's a non-factor right now. He's still limited and only participating in 7-on-7s. And so it's unfortunate that it sort of sorted itself out this way and that injuries had to play a role in it. But Flacco sort of by default is your starting quarterback. And so I think that sort of became more clear today with the news on Shedeur Sanders. And we'll see what Thursday brings in terms of a joint practice, if there's any updates on those guys.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Tom Dundon, the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes and a pickleball enthusiast, has agreed to become the owner of the Portland Trail Blazers. He's buying the team and keeping them in Portland.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast.
Tom Dundon, who is the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, an investor in Topgolf, and an enthusiast in the pickleball world, has agreed to purchase the Trail Blazers. The news was first reported by Sportico that Dundon was buying the team, later confirmed a couple other places, including by ESPN, where Shams Charania says that the sale will be for a valuation over $4 billion. I think the baseline for NBA teams was basically the Hornets at $3.5 billion. So with the Blazers being for north of $4 billion sounds about right. It's the right ballpark. The Allen estate has agreed to sell the team. Now, the actual closure of this sale will probably take a long time. As reported here first on Locked On Blazers, when the team was announced for sale, the anticipation would be that it was going to take 9 to 12 months for the process to be completed. Clearly, this is faster than that, but the closure of the sale will be sometime in the future. I think you can look to the Boston Celtics, where in late February, early March, they agreed to sell the team, and now we're sitting here in August, and the sale has not been yet finalized. So that's, 4 full months later. So we're, I would expect sometime into the season that this deal actually gets finalized. But it is the agreement to purchase the team is indeed in place. So who is this group buying the team? Let's get into that first. Tom Dundon is about to be 54-year-old, currently 53, but turns 54 in early September. A 54-year-old who owns the Carolina Hurricanes. He became the majority owner, bought 52% of the Carolina Hurricanes, and the rights to the RBC Center in Portland, RBC Arena in Raleigh for $425 million in 2018. He has been the now majority owner of the Canes for about 7 years. Shout out to my Hicks with Sticks there in beautiful Piedmont, the Piedmont region of North Carolina. He's also the majority owner of a couple pickleball entities, PPA Tour, Professional Pickleball Association, and the Major League Pickleball. And he is according to the Sports Business Journal, roughly 10% investor, 10% ownership stake in Topgolf. He's worked in the sports world. He has Dallas ties, went to SMU, and is currently based in Dallas, although he spends some time in Raleigh. And this is someone who's worked in the sports world. He's mostly been a real estate developer and worked in some other places. Like many billionaires, he got rich writing subprime loans. The story of him sort of making his first a bit of money was working in sort of a car loan space that kind of popped off, and then he's a very successful investor, turning some millions of dollars into some billions of dollars, and now he is going to be the owner of the Portland Trail Blazers. So that's Dundon. He'll be the what they call the governor now. It's just a stupid language. He's the owner of the team. He'll be the acting owner of the team, the face of the team, and the majority shareholder as it lands. You've got to pay. It's roughly 20% of the purchase price, so we're talking like $1 billion to get in on the ground. You got to have to be the majority owner, and the ownership group will also include the Mark Czar, who is the co-president of Blue Owl Capital, and Shield Tile, who runs who is the CEO of Collective Global. These are venture capital type investment firm types, the people who have all of this money to make these purchases. We'll see what Czar and Tile and their level of involvement and part of sort of what they look like as a part of the ownership group. But it sounds like it's gonna be Dundon. So that's who this group is. But the most important bit of news here, now 5 minutes into this bonus episode, is that the team isn't staying. The team is staying. Whoa! The team is going to remain in Portland. That's the most important part of this. I mean, maybe to you, if you live somewhere else, you're rooting for them to leave. But the reporting at first from Sportico and now confirmed several other places, including by Bill Oram of the Oregonian, this is the plan is for the team to stay here. The question is, what does staying here look like? Because it is clear, at a minimum, there need to be significant renovations, or there will be significant renovations to the Moda Center. The Moda Center is the oldest arena in the NBA that has not undergone significant renovations. It's one of the oldest arenas in the league period. I believe it's 7th oldest, according to an interview I heard with Marshall Glickman on Oregon Public Broadcasting's Think Out Loud program. It is a It is a functional arena for you and I, people who attend games, but for the ownership group, typically what happens, sort of the cycle is about every 30 years, these arenas get renovated or replaced, and typically when new ownership comes in, they want a new arena. They want a new, sort of a larger pie, a larger share of the pie in terms of luxury boxes and high-end amenities and things like that draw big dollars, per capita dollars at games. That is coming, one way or another. So one way it comes is a massive renovation of the arena, right? Is a several summer process, displacing the WNBA team, but a several summer process of massive renovations to the arena, or it is building a new arena entirely. And I think you can look to a couple places to kind of get a sense of what this might look like. One of the places that it might look like is in Salt Lake City, where they have a centrally located arena in sort of the downtown centrally located in Salt Lake City area. It's a little bit older. When they had a new young owner come in, they did not move the arena, although there was some conversations that they might. Instead, they made significant renovations. They got a hockey team. They did all this stuff, but that included a larger real estate play, a larger redevelopment of the area around it, of more of downtown Salt Lake City, or more of like, I don't think it's, to me, that's not downtown Salt Lake City. I've been there a lot of times, but like the sort of central business commercial area surrounding the arena, a larger real estate play. And then if you look in Raleigh, where Dundon bought the Hurricanes in 2018, there were some whispers that maybe hockey in the American South wasn't going to be the thing. See the Atlanta Thrashers. And there was some whispers that maybe the Hurricanes, once relocated from beautiful Hartford, Connecticut, would be relocated. There's some whispers they might move. But instead, the relocation rumors kind of died because the team was successful, basically immediately making the Eastern Conference Finals, and then Dundon in 2023 undertook a deal to extend the arena's lease 20 years up through 2044. There's a lease to remain at the arena. And then to redevelop the land around PNC Arena in Raleigh. It is not a big urban arena. It is out there, like just off the highway in the suburban sort of Nowheresville. But that area is certainly expanding. But it is not like a truly urban arena like in Salt Lake City or like we have here in Portland. But they're transforming the area around PNC, around this arena where the hockey team plays, into a huge mixed-use entertainment districts that's going to include restaurants and bars and hotels and high-end condos and places, everything, right? Like it's going to make this like a true campus, live, work, play type of campus. Does that sound like the move that you might execute here in Portland? Yeah, that sounds very similar. Renegotiating a lease for a long-term lease and then spending a bunch of money to redevelop the land around the arena. The problem is that Portland has some challenges, like some actual physical challenges with developing the land around the arena. One, the highway is right there. Two, Memorial Coliseum is there, and they're putting some public money for about $40 million into renovating that building. It's also on the historic register. As I understand it, there isn't like a ton of legal protections that would prevent someone from demolishing the Memorial Coliseum, but there's some loopholes. There would be some constraints. And when it was about to get torn down back in 2008, and there was basically got it on the historic register and preserved its lasting its lasting legacy, and also just like made it into a thing that is going to be harder to move in the future. And then there's just some like physical constraints where the Moda Center is located is right up against the water. Right up against the water is this big rubber plant owned by the Louis Dreyfus family that they don't want to sell it reportedly, and you'd have to buy that and then develop that. And there might be some sort of environmental stuff associated with the big rubber plant. And then so if there is a larger real estate play, there are some constraints. It's possible. Tear down the Econo Lodge that's right next door. You could, there's the Portland Public Schools building that has long been rumored to be sort of a part of the redevelopment world. There's an agreement with the Albina district to sort of revamp that area in general. But I think what is true is that when these renovations happen, they often happen as a part of a larger real estate play. You can see it in Salt Lake City. You can see it with the now soon-to-be owner of the Trailblazers, Tom Dundon, what he did in Raleigh. This is what you want. And in fact, speaking of Marshall Glickman, who is the son of Harry Glickman, the original owner of the Blazers and part of this group that was working hard to keep the Blazers in Portland, he was on Think Out Loud last week, and he said that basically it is almost impossible to get a return on investment for billionaires if you have an arena without a district, a sort of entertainment district around it, without a larger real estate play. You cannot get a big enough return on investment to make it palatable. So we will see what this means, but I think there are big hurdles to overcome in terms of what happens with the Moda Center. Is it going to be a massive renovation, which I think probably makes the most sense, or are they going to try to relocate? Are they going to move up a little bit east to the Lloyd district and build this massive entertainment district that also has access via public transportation, which is kind of a need and could provide some parking areas as well as a place to develop a massive entertainment district? That's all. I think you can see, if you look closely, how this works, is that a larger real estate play in which many business interests can be placated to some extent is really the move here. You see when teams are purchased and teams don't move and teams stay in smaller markets. It's how you can maximize that sort of value.
The intensity ratcheted up on day 2 of Falcons Titans joint practices, but did it go too far?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast.
Of course, we are back with an illustrious guest. She is Maria Martin, sports anchor at 11 Alive, and she's here with us to talk about day 2 of the Falcons joint practices. She got her refereeing on today with all the fights going on in practice. But Maria, basically I got to ask you, was the story of day 2 of joint practices between the Falcons and the Titans, was it more about the fights or was it more about football?
I mean, look, it was about the fights. That's what everybody was so fired up about, right? And you see everyone reporting about it on Twitter. And granted, that is, or X, I guess is what it's called now. That is, it's the period of practice where we're not allowed to take our phones out in video. So you're going to have to take our word for it. But there were so many fights happening today. And you knew that was going to happen. The first day of joint practices with any team, it's usually a little cool, calm, and collected. Remember, the Titans have been on like a worldwide tour. They were in Tampa with their joint practices. Then they had their preseason game there. They have not been home in 2 weeks. And so, yeah, sluggish start for the first joint practice with the Falcons, expected, whatever. And the Falcons definitely won the day in terms of football on that first day. Second day, Tides turned quite a bit, and it wasn't even hot outside. It wasn't like there were, tempers flaring because the temperature, I think it was just the competition heating up, literally and figuratively. And you saw that on the football field. I thought it was very encouraging. Just you're seeing more signs about this team coming together in a way that we kind of haven't seen in the past, or at least in recent memory for the Falcons. So yeah, all the focus and attention was certainly on the fights. And of course, when you see a quarterback in there, it's not every day you get that. Your starting quarterback is going toe for toe in a fight and sticking up for some guys. It's feisty. I love it. Everybody knows football is my favorite sport. Hockey is my second favorite. And so the blend of two worlds today was lovely.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So when you mentioned Michael Penix, and for those folks that did not hear, Maria, you can give us more details and a full recap. But from what I understand, there was one sort of huge fight that drew all sides. And it seemed like that one was instigated, maybe not by Michael Penix, but because Michael Penix was at the heart of that one, with maybe some trash talking back and forth after he made a big completion to Ray McLeod, and Titans players didn't like it. And he was maybe, and so he was at the heart of that fight. And that basically caused like the benches to clear and everybody to sort of get in the midst of that. So I'm curious, give us the blow by blow of what you saw, as well as what are your thoughts seeing the quarterback of all people in the heart of these fights.
Yeah, so I'm not going to throw Michael Penix Jr. under the bus. It wasn't just him out there fighting. I'll go blow for blow and tell you exactly what happened with him on the field, because that's what everyone is chomping at the bit to hear, right? But special teams, there were fights over there. There were fights on both of the fields. So it wasn't just oh, there's this brawl happening here and nothing. No, it was all out everywhere. And if you talk to the players, they have to ask you, hey, what happened on that field? Because they're hearing of fights on the opposite field. Like, it was a lot going on today. But the main event, everyone, if you want to go in the fighting aspect of things, right, was Michael Penix Jr. And he said it was an alter ego for him. He doesn't know who that person was. He doesn't really even know what happened. And I actually believe that, when your adrenaline is pumping and in those instances, especially in sports, you just kind of black out and nothing really comes to mind. And that's kind of what happened to Mike. That's how heated the moment was. It was a deep ball to Ray, a big completion. And on Mike's account, there was a lot of chatter happening all throughout the practice leading up to that point. So I would assume that he said some things in return because he had heard them all afternoon, and he even said they said some words. So I shared mine, and I don't know what he said. He doesn't know what he said because he just kind of blacked that out of his memory. One thing leads to another. I'm sure someone goes chest for chest with Mike, and some things happen. So I didn't see the initial scuffle because it was quick. And as you mentioned, sidelines are clearing, benches are clearing, and everybody's coming to the middle. And next thing I see is Mike Penix on the ground. And so, of course, your teammates, when you see your prized possession, and in the NFL, it is a lot of money on the line when you got a starting quarterback on the ground. That's scary. And the whole point of these joint practices, especially for Mike, who doesn't play in preseason games, these quarterbacks aren't live, so they can't get hit. DJ Williams, the quarterback's coach for the Falcons, even said that's his first hit in training camp on Mike Penix Jr. Look, and he's a competitor. The guy played running back when he was in Little League. He likes to put his nose in there, but unfortunately in the NFL, you got to protect your assets at all costs. So I know that made probably coaches, and Terry Fontenot was even in there. And that's when, things are getting a little rough whenever you see your general manager running to the middle of the field and trying to break something like that up. So it was a rare occurrence. I don't know that I'll ever see anything like it again. And he even told me when I asked him, have you ever been a part of something like this before? Mike, you're so calm. You're never really one to instigate. You don't really seem like the trash talker that, say, a Drake London would be, who you could not contain after this happened, by the way. He was just chirp, 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 and the whole rest of the practice, and rightfully so. You're sticking up for your quarterback. It was nice to see. But he said, no, honestly, he can't remember a time that he's ever been a part of something like that. So I don't think you're ever going to get it again. It was a one-time event. I firmly believe that. And, Mike said he wishes that it wouldn't have gotten to that point. But at that point, words are exchanged. You got to stick up for yourself. And it was, to me, once in a lifetime when it comes to this specific player.
Now, where do you take that? Because again, it's not normal for your quarterback to be involved in this, but do you see that as a positive? Do you see that, hey, there's a fire in Michael Penix's belly? This is part of the whole leadership stuff. How do you interpret it?
Yeah, let's be very clear. I don't think Mike needs to fight for me to think that he's not a competitor or that he is competitive. I don't need to see that from him to know his competitive spirit. Even though we talk about how cool, calm, and collected his demeanor is and all these things, you understand how competitive Mike is in just by getting to know him. And then, of course, the competitor that you see on the football field, or at least the glimpses that we have at the NFL level. However, when you see your quarterback take it to that next level, I'm telling you, ask any football player, that is your leader. That is your alpha on both sides of the ball. They look at the quarterback. What is he doing? How does he lead? What's his body language like? What does he do in and out of the huddle? All of the focus and attention is on what I believe to be the most important position in all of sports. And when you have somebody with that kind of caliber and pressure already on your shoulders, and you take it to a next level and you show your guys, I ain't scared, I think that unlocks something different in a team. I really do. There is an art and a science to this. And if you ask any football player, they'll tell you the same thing. It's why Caden Ellis, when we were talking to him afterwards, he didn't see it, but he heard it from his teammates that Mike was involved in a fight. And he was like, oh, that's my quarterback. QB1, baby. I love you, Mike. And so that, I think, is going to do something really special for this team. I don't think that it guarantees you a Lombardi trophy. I don't think that it guarantees you a deep run in the playoffs. However, there is something to that whenever you do witness the most important player on the field go that extra mile and show that he has fire and he's not scared. his words exactly. He said, I think they just viewed me as just a quarterback, and I'm not like that.
We've all been there. Logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deals? Gametime's Zone Deal picks the best seats in your section for you. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
With Conrad Hussey dismissed from the Florida State football team, how will the depth chart evolve?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles.
Football season is about here. In a week and a half, we got Farmageddon, Iowa State and Kansas State overseas. Florida State is in the middle of their football camp, and we've gotten through 2 scrimmages, but the news after the second scrimmage wasn't what you necessarily would want. Conrad Hussey has been dismissed. That was denoted by Mike Norvell at his press conference, and didn't just leave. At least according to Norvell, that's his story. So nobody's heard from Hussey. I don't know what happened or didn't happen. Bottom line, he is no longer with the Florida State football team. Let's go back 2 years. He was a guy that had some impact as a freshman, had some moments last year, but he was up and down, and towards the end of the season, didn't get it done. And of course, the whole team was a little bit off, if you will, in a disastrous year. But there was still hope that the former St. Thomas Aquinas star could end up being a big-time player at Florida State University. Speed, length, the ability to play corner, nickel, or safety. He's got traits for any of those. It's a kid that I got to know and I saw play quite a few times. I don't think there's any doubt that he had plenty of options. Florida State was smart to go after him. But for whatever reason, Conrad Hussey has been dismissed. And I've been waiting to do this podcast to get more details, but Norvell that's the shortest answer I've ever seen him give. It was less than 10 words. Like, he wanted no part of the Hussey discussion, like none. I'm guessing it didn't end on good terms. Again, I have no idea what the details are, but it is unfortunate. So let's talk about the defense overall after we talk about the safety position. How does that change what Florida State's trying to do? Because remember, they don't use 2, they use 3 safeties in this defense. So numbers at safety are very important to the Noles. With that being the case, for whatever it's worth, Florida State has had a bit of a quote-unquote change of the guard. Shaheem Brown, he did get mentioned today by Norvell, but he was a guy that was your leading tackler last year. He's not expected to start as it is right now. Maybe he ends up, Ashwin Barker, excuse me, might be the main guy at that spot. Debatable. They're not super deep at the safety positions, though, because, again, they're running 3. I'm going to ask a few questions about what you would do, but number one, who's your starter? You got to go with that first. Barker sounds like he's getting the most run. He's a redshirt junior. He's a former JUCO kid that has come on and taken the bull by the horns by all accounts. That's just one guy, though. You need to be minimum 2 deep at every spot. Is Shaheem Brown, is he starting to finally come on? I haven't heard enough to say yes to that. I don't know of anybody else that is ready. I mean, somebody like Max Redmond, or maybe they cross-train somebody like Quindarius Jones. I don't know, but Edwin Joseph is probably going to be a guy that can start if it's not Barker, because KJ Kirkland's probably a starter, and then Earl Little is the nickel. So you've got Edwin Joseph, you've got Ashwin Barker, Shaheem Brown, all in the mix at one spot, possibly. Depends on how you want to line them up, but Hussey's gone. So they need to figure it out quick, because you got to be able to rotate a lot of guys against Bama. and it's going to be 100+ degrees on the field at Doak Campbell Stadium because it's a 3:30, 3:35 kick or whatever it is, maybe 3:40, TV is with commercials. On August 30th, they've got a very difficult task ahead of them, and I don't think that it's going to be easy to get it done. You've got to be able to figure out who it is, but not overrun them with reps because it's hot as bejesus down there, Tallahassee right now anyway. So the safety spot, here's my questions. Do they move anybody over from running back or receiver or corner to add depth, or are they good? And can they, number two, can they get everything they need done in fall camp without overrunning these guys with too many reps? I don't know the answer to that second one, and that's why I brought up the first question, bringing somebody over. I would try like crazy, and maybe a walk-on or somebody else figures it out, but numbers at safety are very, very important in Tony White's defense, as much, if not more, than just any other position on that side of the football. That's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask. So how would it impact the D? Well, if KJ Kirkland starts, this would be his first year being the guy. He's a redshirt sophomore, really highly touted player out of Jacksonville Reigns. That's good news. The other spot, sounds like Little is the guy, but now is Joseph definitely the other starter? I don't know. Is it Barker? We've heard about him possibly starting. And who would be the backup at which spots? Because I don't see three more guys that they're anxiously awaiting to put in those spots yet. So losing somebody that I thought could compete for playing time, if not start, to me is a little bit concerning. And it should be for all Florida State fans because the depth chart, while it evolves throughout a fall camp, just flat losing a guy. I mean, it's one thing for a guy not to play well for a couple practices and he moves back on the depth chart. To flat lose a guy, that's pretty rough. So maybe Ricky Knight, maybe Charles Lester, somebody might move over. Maybe it's Kai Bates. He's big enough. He was over 200 pounds coming out of high school. But Florida State isn't in a perfect spot at safety. And let's be honest. Going into the spring, that was probably one of the deeper spots, but we thought Brown was going to be a key guy. He hasn't been yet. And we thought Hussey was going to be a pretty good player too. Now he's off the team. That's a big chunk of change you're losing there. It's unfortunate, especially with the opening game being the Alabama Crimson Tide, but that's college football. You got to buck up and figure it out. This is Florida State football. I'll be curious to see how they do the rotation and who starts where. Are they going to cross-train guys? There's so many possible questions about Florida State secondary, but this much I know. I trust Coach White and his scheme, and above all else, this is why I'm still good with the defense. And I was writing down some notes about this earlier, and this is number one on the board. Why I thought like Florida State was going to be better this year. They got more talent, and they've got better coaches. I mentioned that the other day. Well, you could also add accountability. Top of the board now. Florida State, they got rid of Hussey for some reason. Again, Norvell used the word dismissed. That's not necessarily a mutual parting of the ways. So they're not going to take any fluff from anybody. And I think that's something this program probably needed last year, to be really honest, and probably should have dismissed a few guys is my guess. But they kind of did that way in the offseason with a few guys that ended up transferring. Let your mind wander who I'm talking about. Some players that went to other prominent programs and needed a fresh start. Good for them if they do well. But Florida State needs to get back to being a team again, like that 23 unit. There were too many individuals last year. If you have problems, you got to get rid of guys before the season starts. You got to know who your rotation is. You got to know who your depth chart is. You got to know as a player who you can count on. So good for Florida State, and they should be able to figure this out a little bit easier than what I originally thought. So let's talk just briefly about who will surprise for Florida State at 2025 and why as a team, I think they will surprise. This, to be honest, just gets added to the list because, again, if you don't have discipline, if you don't have a team bought in, it's over. Florida State getting rid of Hussey, if they truly needed to, good. Again, I don't know the reason, but I'm glad they did.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Officially official. Tennessee is going back to Adidas.
You are Locked On Balls, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers.
It's not anything that's a surprise. It was never a who Tennessee was going to partner with for the apparel deal. If Tennessee was going to stay with Nike or go back to Adidas, it was just when. I mean, this is the worst kept secret in the world, right? Everybody's known that Tennessee's going back to Adidas for quite some time, but it became official yesterday when Tennessee made the announcement at 3:30. And this is not for this upcoming academic year, so Tennessee will still be with Nike for this football season, basketball season, baseball season. It will officially go into circulation, I believe, July the 1st. It's when that academic year kicks in for 2026. So the first time you'll see Tennessee players wearing the apparel of Adidas again will be next football season. Football, volleyball should be the first teams out there wearing the Adidas gear. So this is a big deal. First and foremost, I know fans have a lot of thoughts about this, and Nike's cool. The swish, I mean, that's all cool. Don't get me wrong. But in my opinion, if you're going to be a super fan, if you're going to be a big-time fan of Tennessee athletics or Tennessee football or college in general, because the landscape is so different nowadays, man, this should be a big deal for you. It really, really should be, in my opinion, because what Adidas provides vastly dominates, in my opinion, that of what Nike can provide right now. So, for instance, Adidas, part of its push right here is to prioritize college athletics, and that often opens doors for national branding campaigns that UT now in the current landscape can help facilitate. NIL opportunities for Tennessee athletes on a national scale. And you know, Nike really just kind of does that with the professional routes, the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, but Adidas is prioritizing college. And so college athletes at Tennessee are now going to have, some of them, potentially some opportunities to have some national branding opportunities. It's a really, really cool deal, right? And, you know, Tennessee, 10-year deal with Adidas. That's what they're going to, join into. The financials of it are undisclosed right now. We don't know how much money Tennessee's getting and all that, but Adidas is set to make Tennessee essentially the face of the franchise, right? I mean, I don't think that I've seen a quote saying that specifically, but Adidas is prioritizing Tennessee very, very much. And so for Tennessee to leave Nike, right? For Tennessee to move away from Nike, the financials had to be very, very important. The financials had to make sense. And obviously, we don't know those financials specifically, those numbers, but Tennessee made the move to Adidas for next year and for the next 10 years. And so it leads me to believe that the financials are where Tennessee wanted them to be. It's the era of revenue sharing, the era of NIL, and Adidas is giving Tennessee the best opportunity to compete in that landscape. So as a fan, in my opinion, you should be thrilled, right? Because this gives your program, your team, more opportunities to recruit star talented athletes to campus to play for your team, because they're going to have all these opportunities. So I think that's a big time deal. More on those financials. I know Nike paying Tennessee somewhere around like a base salary of $1.2 million each year for this year. I think they also had an allotment annual salary as well of around 4.5 maybe. I know that Tennessee also got an annual Nike Elite credit of around $100,000. I think the football team, basketball team, lady balls, I think they all kind of got one of those as well. Nike was negotiating, because it's the providing sponsor right now, the apparel partner for Tennessee. There was an exclusivity negotiating window where Nike could only talk to Tennessee about re-upping that deal, and that passed, I believe, at the end of March. And so since the end of there's national negotiating windows to where Adidas and some other companies can come in, and obviously it just kind of took off from there. So really excited to see kind of what this turns into. To my understanding, and I think I've read some places, Nike had the final say if Nike wanted to match or have a counter offer to what Adidas presented to Tennessee. And I don't believe Nike ever made a counteroffer to that. So it was just, again, it was a matter of when this announcement was going to happen, not if, that Tennessee was going back to Adidas. So some really good stuff over at VolQuest.com. Brent Hubbs, Austin Price, Grant Ramey, myself, Rob Lewis, Matt Ray. I feel like, VolQuest.com, Brent specifically really knocked this out of the park, in terms of the breaking news of Tennessee going back to Adidas. Again, it's going to be a 10-year deal. The official apparel provider for the Vols and Lady Vols starting in the fall of 2026. A lot of comments specific to VolQuest. We'll read this real quick. This is the Chris McGuire. He's the VP of Sports Marketing for Adidas North America. This is what he had to say to VolQuest specifically. Quote, "We will continue to invest into NIL. We have an affiliate program where all student athletes can participate and essentially become an NIL athlete for Adidas." End quote. Again, just showing you yet again just another reason why this is so lucrative for prospective student athletes, for guys and gals Tennessee is recruiting on the high school realm. You come to Tennessee, you're going to have opportunities in the NIL world through Adidas, the essential apparel provider for the Vols and the Lady Vols. This is actually from the press release that was sent out by Adidas President John Miller, the president of Adidas North America. He had to say this, quote, this is from the press release. "Tennessee's creative team will remain the primary driver of uniform design throughout the partnership. Adidas will collaborate closely with Tennessee Creative, landing the brand's design expertise and innovative products to elevate the signature look of the Tennessee Volunteers." So what that means is Tennessee essentially has creative control. Tennessee's creative team will be working hand in hand with Adidas. So in no way, shape, or form will Tennessee athletes be bombarded or shocked with new uniform designs that weren't ever showed to Tennessee beforehand. It's Tennessee's creative team that's essentially leading that uniform design and working hand in hand with Adidas. So I know a lot of people got a lot of questions about that. Will Adidas have creative control? Will Tennessee have creative control? Pretty much Tennessee's going to be the lead in that area, but also working with Adidas in years to come. And of course, I'm excited to see what this means. Black jerseys for football, smoky grays, will that continue or not? Can we get some throwback uniforms? That would be awesome. That would be fantastic. What's baseball team going to look like, right? I'm really intrigued to kind of see what all this looks like in the coming months. Obviously not going to happen in the next year. This is what Danny White had to say specifically to VolQuest when he did a sit down with Brent Hubbs. Quote, Adidas, have been heavily involved in NIL space since its inception. They have an entire division focused on NIL. They have student athletes from all over the country, some of which compete for our teams right now, that are signed up with their NIL program. So there's a lot of reasons why we feel like they've been the best partner for us as we march into the modern era of college sports. Again, that was Tennessee Athletics Director Danny White to Brent Hubbs of VolQuest.com. So this is a big deal. And again, I know that everybody likes Nike and everybody thinks Nike's the standard, and that's awesome, right? I'm not here, downgrading or talking bad about the apparel Nike. I've got a lot of stuff of Nike in my closet, right? But in this era of college athletics, in this era of the NIL-driven revenue-sharing era of college sports, this is a great move because Adidas is trying to prioritize the college landscape, and not only prioritize the college landscape with national branding opportunities, but really putting a ton of emphasis in the University of Tennessee, and trying to essentially, again, make Tennessee, quote unquote, the face of the franchise. And I think that's a really big deal. Really big deal. Another quote here from McGuire, who's the VP of Adidas North America. He said, quote, "Tennessee will always be a priority for us. We are excited to welcome them back into the brand. We're excited about what the future holds. We will continue to invest into NIL," and goes on to that quote that I read earlier. So I think this is a big deal. This is a big deal. Again, this won't take effect until essentially, this time next year. Tennessee is still going to be with Nike through the 2025-2026 academic year. Tennessee was with Adidas from 1998 to 2014, I believe, and then been with Nike ever since. So had a long run with Adidas, had some highs here lately with Nike, but going back to Adidas for the next apparel provider for the Vols and the Lady Vols. Now that it's official, though, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Tennessee going back to Adidas. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? We'll love to hear from you right here on Locked On Vols, and maybe I'll share some of the opinions and some of your responses on the show coming up tomorrow for a Friday Locked On Vols.
We've all been there. Logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deals? Gametime's Zone Deal picks the best seats in your section for you. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
Today's joint practice against the Los Angeles Rams might be the most impactful proving ground for the New Orleans Saints quarterback competition.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast.
I think this could be the most important day for the New Orleans Saints quarterbacks when it comes to this quarterback competition. Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck, both have shown good things. Both have shown some things I'm sure that they would like back. But really, it's the adversity and managing the adversity that's most important. And they're sure to see adversity and also have an opportunity to bounce back from adversity over the course of this one-day joint practice with the Los Angeles Rams. So let's break it down for each of these quarterbacks. We'll start off with Spencer Rattler, who I think is still in the lead when it comes to quarterback competition and certainly would like to expand that lead quite a bit across against Tyler Shuck, because he'll have to in order to earn that week one role. I think the biggest thing for him is going to be bouncing back from not really the last 2 days, because again, on Wednesday, he had a strong day, completed 15 of his 20 passes, threw a pair of touchdowns, including one that went for like a lateral touchdown and all those other things that would count as a touchdown. But each of the end of the last two practices, he's led this long double-digit play drive, and then in situations that aren't really within his control, ended up with interceptions by the end of it, which isn't to say that he had bad practices. Like I said, strong practices in both of those showings, especially the one on Wednesday, but not necessarily the punctuation that you'd like to have, which isn't the same as having a punctuation you don't want to have, but not getting the punctuation that you'd like to have on each of those last 2 days. Today gave Spencer Rattler an opportunity to be able to punctuate as much as he wants when it comes to, or as much as he can, when it comes to what should be a pivotal day in this quarterback competition. The interception that ended his day by Julian Blackmon on Wednesday was on a throw it up situation with 2 seconds left on the clock on a third down by a touchdown scenario. So you just put the ball up in the end zone, hope somebody goes out there and makes a play on it, hope it's not a defensive guy. Unfortunately, it was a defensive guy, not on Spencer Rattler. Then you go to the day before that on Tuesday, a very well-placed pass to Dante Pettis. Ball goes off the hands of Dante Pettis, tips up in the air, and then Julian Blackmon ends up with it. So 2 straight days, you saw double-digit play drives into the red zone that end up landing on, not so advantageous situations into the defense's hands. And so now you get a chance, if you're Spencer Rattler, to kind of show up and punctuate, because there's no reason he should lose confidence after those 2 interceptions. But I wouldn't blame him if he was a little annoyed. You know what I mean? Like walking into this Rams practice going, I really didn't want my day to end that way. And due to the circumstances, it did. Now I'm going to make sure that this day doesn't even have a chance to end that way. And so I look to see if he will be able to kind of take the reins and kind of own the day, seize the day, if you will, in that situation. Over on the Tyler Shuck side of it all, it's really just about continuing the momentum. He's had really good momentum since the Saints switched over to a little bit more scrimmage live call type situations. And he had a pretty strong day in the preseason game as well, minus the welcome to the NFL pick 6. If I'm not holding any of those interceptions against those guys, then you see strong days from all of them and an opportunity to bounce back and do so with 2 key factors. Going up against a pretty good defense that's going to bring you a pretty good pass rush. That's number 1. But also number 2, actually getting opportunities with the first team offense. This was something that I talked about in yesterday's live show, that I want to go back to real quick in case you didn't catch that show. And even if you did catch it, I think it's worth being reminded of going into whatever reporting is going to come out of this joint practice today, that the things that you hear coming out of these joint practice should end up holding and carrying some weight. And we'll tell you if it doesn't, but should end up holding some weight. And this is coming from a guy that really, honestly, I'm not a big fan of joint practices, period. I don't think that teams actually get out of it what they say that they got out of it. I don't buy it. I think that there's things that you can do within your own organization that allow you to be able to control the situation a bit more. Joint practice, to me, is just a risk. But when you have a quarterback competition, it gives you a lot of added value. When you have new players on the offensive line, there's a lot of value. When you have new coaching, there's a lot of value. That's why we're focusing on all that on today's show. But this opportunity for Spencer Rattler, for Tyler Shough, for the both of them, is one that is unique. When you go in and you're the starter in a preseason game and you're playing with other first-team players, you're not always playing with other starters. No Chris Olave, no Alvin Kamara, no Rashid Shaheed to start that game against the Chargers. Best believe that if Tyler Shough is starting the game Sunday against Jacksonville, he ain't getting those guys either. You know what I mean? And if he does, it's for a very, very brief amount of time. And so these joint practices give both of these guys a little bit more of a fair shot to actually have a first team around them, have the starters around them. Kellen Moore said that the workload is going to be pretty heavy for the first team guys. That's why I don't expect a lot of those first team guys to see snaps, or at least not many snaps, going into Sunday's game against Jacksonville with that preseason game, which stinks for fans, right? Because you don't get to come and see anything during the Rams and Saints joint practice. The Rams are hosting this joint practice. Their practices are closed, and so therefore this is closed as well. And if the Saints were hosting these Irvine, California practices, they have been closed. And so because of that, they would have also been closed to the public. So you kind of lose your chance as a fan to get an early look at the starting lineup. But this is going to be really valuable for these two quarterbacks, that they actually get to take snaps with the guys that they're expected to take snaps with week 1 of the 2025 season, which Spencer Rattler in live game situations has not done yet, right? Tyler Shough coming in as a rookie has not done yet. And so being able to do this and go into these joint practices, go up against another team, a good team at that, probably one of my favorites in terms of like Super Bowl favorites or playoff favorites, probably one of the favorites going into the 2025 season in the NFC. And so now you get a chance to go up against those guys with the other players that you're actually going to take snaps with in 2025. So this is a major opportunity for both of these quarterbacks to show what it is that they could do with a full complement in a way that they haven't been able to do that. Now, it's a full-ish complement, right? They won't have Trevor Penning, but they're going to have the starting wide receivers. They're going to have Juwan Johnson, their top tight end, along with Jack Stoll. They're going to have the majority of their starting offensive line. They're going to have Alvin Kamara. All of that makes a big difference. And so I'm really, really intrigued to see how these two quarterbacks handle that situation, having all the weapons and going up against a unfamiliar competition, while also being in what has become a very familiar and friendly competition between Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough. I think today could be the most important day, could wind up being the most important day in this quarterback battle by the time that it's all said and done.